Happy Easter! On a warm Good Friday in the early 1980s, a lawnmower saved my father's life. Well, I'm not really sure whether to give the credit to the mower or the lawn or God or some cosmic stroke of luck. My uncle, Dad's brother Ralph, his sons Gary, and Alan had stopped by the house to ask my dad if he wanted to ride with them as they hauled a trailer to a nearby town. My father declined as he needed to mow the lawn. The train had made it a closed casket affair, and their wrecked truck sat on the back edge of our property for months afterward. My dad was inconsolable but refused to have the truck hauled away. No one could understand why he wanted the damn thing. I was 9 years old and watched curiously as he would go sit in a chair and stare at the crinkled white Toyota. My mother assumed it was guilt and part of the grieving process. Spring turned to summer and the cicadas screamed us to sleep, though sleep was restless that season. The same dream every night. I'm barefoot in the backyard and the sky is a funny shade of emerald green. The wreckage draws me closer. Through the broken glass on the uncaved passenger side, I see a small girl that I assume is around my age. Her eyes are milky white and she's eating something from the seat. Moths and butterflies. Hundreds of them. Her hands and face are covered in the iridescent dust and she moves in a jerky manner. Happy Easter. I feel pretty in this dress, that's all she ever said. I bet I had that nightmare 40 or 50 times over the course of 3 months. My father was starting to recover by August, and he no longer sat in the yard staring at the truck. I stood outside when the men came to haul the truck away, and my father looked at me and asked, "Did you see her too?" When I was a kid, I thought the thing I had encountered was the Easter Bunny. Now I know better. I was an obedient child and never got into much trouble. Maybe that's part of why I was never very tough and got scared easily. I have to admit that I was a bit of a crybaby. I must have been around 9 years old when this happened. It was the day before Easter and I was thrilled. Every year, my parents would hide chocolate eggs for me around the house, and in the morning, the glorious search would begin. By then, I already didn't really believe in the Easter Bunny or Santa anymore. I kind of had a feeling that my parents were behind it all. Of course this feeling was right, but my childish faith was not completely gone yet. I was just doubtful. That one night, however, my faith was renewed. I think the doubt came in when I was 7 and heard my dad curse loudly that one night when he hit his head carrying one of my Christmas presents downstairs, so I would find it in the morning. He must have thought I was asleep. Well, I wasn't. So I heard him whisper shout at my mom to help him and take that goddamn birdcage already. Guess what? I got a bird for Christmas that year. We had to give it away a few months later. But that's an entirely different story. Anyways, it was the night before the Easter egg hunt and I lay in bed shivering with excitement. I couldn't sleep and I didn't even try to. I heard my parents shuffle about downstairs. They were talking in hushed voices. The creaking on the lower staircase told me that they were sneaking around the house, probably hiding candy for me to find in the morning. The places they would hide it in were always really tricky and hard to find, so I listened closely, trying to get a few hints on the chocolate's whereabouts. "Let's put one on the top shelf. It'll drive her crazy," I heard my dad whisper, followed by the sound of my mom giggling. I chuckled. Then, I heard one of them coming up the stairs, quietly approaching my room. I pulled my blanket up to my nose, pressed my eyes shut and began breathing very slowly as to pretend that I was asleep. It was my dad. I could hear him as he made his way past my bed and fumbled around with some papers on my little desk. I then heard him walk over to the closet where he seemingly stood still for a second, as if he was trying to make out whether I was awake. I felt my lips curling in excitement and managed to quickly press my hand onto my mouth underneath the blanket before I could giggle. Dad let out a small sigh of relief, and I heard him shove something into one of the drawers. He then slowly and ever so quietly made his way out of my room and back down the stairs. "All set?" my mom asked him in a low voice. "Yep. Let's go to sleep now." "God, I'm tired," he whispered back. I don't know when I fell asleep, but it must have been not long after. Maybe 1 hour? Maybe 2. Either way, I was woken up by a rather loud creaking noise. Weird, I thought. I had assumed my parents had gone to bed already. I stayed put and focused. There it was again. A creaking noise as if someone was climbing the upper staircase. The one right outside my room. I felt my heart beat just a little bit faster. There's no need to be nervous, I told myself. Maybe my dad forgot something. Maybe it was just the house settling. I was growing more and more nervous. Trying to calm down did not really work anymore. Panic began to set in when I saw how the door slowly inched open and a dark figure entered my bedroom. I held my breath. The figure was tall, way taller than Mom or Dad. I could not see its face or anything about it for that matter. However, there was just enough moonlight falling into my room through the halfway drawn curtains for me to be able to make out its silhouette. It looked like that of a man. On top of its head, however, were two long, large things. They looked like rabbit ears. I swallowed. This was not normal, this was not right. My eyes began filling with tears. The next thing I heard was its breathing. Long, ragged breaths, the thought of which makes me shiver to this day. It walked over to the window and pulled open the curtains, allowing the bright moonlight to flood my room, illuminating the dark figure. I pressed my eyes shut. I did not want to see what this thing looked like. By now, tears were running down my cheeks. I could hear it approaching and halting right in front of my bed. Then it spoke to me. In a low, raspy voice it said, "Don't open your eyes. Let me have a look at you." It bent down. I felt the blanket being pulled from my head. What followed was the sensation of my face being hit by warm, foul-smelling breath, and then a gloved finger caressing my cheek. My lip was quivering and I could barely hold back a loud sob. It stood like this for a moment, seemingly just staring at me. I was contemplating. What should I do? Should I yell for my parents? Should I try to run? I chose not to take a risk. I was convinced he would get a hold of me and kill me if I did so. I was paralyzed with fear. "SH," the voice cooed. Finally, it pulled back its finger. It was still hovering over me though. I could feel it. "Good. You're a good little girl. Now, hold out your hand." I did as I was told and stretched out my little hand from under the blanket. Again I felt gloved fingers, now wrapping around it, as if preparing to shake it. A low chuckle erupted from my side. "That a good kid. I have a gift for you. I'll place it in your hand now, but you must promise me not to look at it until next morning, okay?" "Okay," I whimpered. "Do you swear on your life?" I swear on my life." "Well then, there you are." I felt something soft and feathery touch my hand. I instantly wrapped my fingers around it. It almost felt like a plushie of some sort, but it was strangely cold to the touch. "Hey, where are your manners? What do you say when you receive a gift?" the voice asked in a strict tone. "Thank you, Mr. Easter Bunny," I whispered in a cracked voice. Another chuckle. "How polite you can be. Tell your mommy and daddy I said hi." With that, it left. I heard it walk down the stairs and then quietly exit through the front door, pulling it shut behind it. I lay there, now beginning to sob quietly, the Easter Bunny's gift still in my hand. I was woken up by my mother's ear-piercing scream. My eyelids fluttered open. It was light outside by now and my mother was standing over me, a broken cup that must have once held cocoa on the floor next to her feet. I stumbled out of bed and right into her arms. "Mom!" I wept. The Easter Bunny scared me. He scared me so much. Strong as she was, my mother picked me up and pressed my head against her shoulder. I suddenly noticed that the gift the Easter Bunny had given me was not in my hand anymore. I tried to turn my head to look for it, but my mother turned around to obscure my view. "No. Honey, don't." I struggled in her arms. "Honey, don't look," she shouted, but it was already too late. The reason for my mother's shock suddenly became clear to me. I had managed to wind out of her grip and had fallen onto the floor, right in front of the dead body of a small yellow chick. That's when I began screaming. I have spent many years of my teenage and young adult life suppressing this memory. Why it came flooding back to me this Easter, 6 years later, I don't know. But what I do know by now is that the thing that came to me that night to talk to me and place a dead baby bird in my hand, the thing that spent the last 12 years haunting my nightmares, was not the Easter Bunny. Bunny at my window. There was always this one tale around the camp of Little Creek. A figure dressed up in an Easter Bunny suit with grimy, matted fur and tall, oversized ears that drooped down. They told tales of the bunny, with large hollow eyes that stared unblinkingly at you from the corner of your room, nestled underneath the thick layer of the darkness. The tales started to spread mysteriously around the camp one day, and that's when I found out about the rumor. Back then, I was only 7 years old. The children around the camp started to speak wild fantasy tales of the figure in the Easter Bunny suit. That it would stand inside the forest, its cold, hollow eyes staring at you from afar, just watching you. I thought back then that these rumors were nothing but some made-up fantasy tale, used to scare me, as well as other kids. That was until I saw him one night. I remember wrapping myself underneath the gentle, completely tender embrace of my bed sheets. Oak walls remained hidden underneath the sheet of darkness coating my bedroom. A dull, moonlight poured inside the small gap of my window, the ethereal light dancing across the walls delicately, illuminating certain objects inside my bedroom with a soft, comfortable light. I pressed my back against the mattress of my bed, immediately leaning into the vast, contemptuous warmth that funneled across my entire body, wrapping me in a transparent blanket. As soon as I was about to pull the covers in my hands straight up over my face, something stopped me. Thump. Thump. Something seemed to collide against the glass of my window, pressing gently but with enough force to make the noise audible to me. At first I thought it was just a bird ramming against the stained glass of the window, but the thumps against my window continued to keep going. Constant tapping, almost as if whatever it was behind the shield of my curtain knew I was there, begged me to come towards the window. Without thinking, I let my feet lean over the bed, silently planting my feet onto the ground. It never took me long to walk slowly over to the window, my breath frozen inside my throat as my pale, shaky fingers reached out to pull the curtains back. And there, standing just an inch away from the glass of my window illuminated effortlessly by the moon, was the figure, the Easter Bunny. Its white, originally fluffy suit was stained from head to toe in dirt, the fur soiled beyond repair, and looking closely, great splashes of something red splattered up the suit, staining the grimy white fur of the suit everywhere possible. Huge, cold hollow eyes stared into my own. Dark, not a hint of emotion or light pierced the gaping black holes that were eyes. The suit had a mouth, a wide, brimming grin that stretched all the way up the suit's cheeks, only stopping halfway beside its hollow eyes. The grin of the bunny wasn't playful, happy. It was beyond mortifying. I can't remember how long it had stared at me, and me staring at it, all it did was just stand there, motionless. The breath was completely stuck inside my throat, my heart hammering violently in my chest, fear bubbling up inside me intensely as I couldn't look away. I had wanted to scream in that moment, desperately scream so my parents would hear me from the other room, but I couldn't. I could only watch as after stretched, long periods of what felt like minutes the Easter Bunny stared at me. It finally started to move. I could only stare, my eyes wide with complete horror, as the Easter Bunny raised one gloved hand to its mouth, a singular red-stained finger coming to graze against the lips of its elongated smile, slowly moving its finger down its lips. A shushing gesture. And then, as quick as that, it was gone. For the rest of that night, I couldn't get to sleep once. The fear clung to me, convincing me that if I dared even close a singular eye, the bunny would come back, and this time, it would stand right inside the corner of my room, unblinking. That thought alone was enough to keep me wide awake, constantly straining my hearing, just to see if I could hear that subtle tap 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 dot tap. The next few days were ominously quiet, a false sense of security spreading across the entirety of the camp. The entire camp seemed to be tense, batting their breaths as they waited for something, anything to happen. Then it did. The disappearances started to happen. It was slow, almost quiet at first. One kid didn't show up for school, then another and another. Nobody seemed to know where they went. And the whispered rumors of the camp only grew louder. I stumbled across my friends one day speaking about the Easter Bunny in low, shushed voices, each one describing the same thing. the dirty white suit, the cold, hollow eyes, and the wide, brimming smile, each one describing the strange feeling that it was watching them. It wasn't just in the corner of their rooms anymore, it followed them, lurking in the shadows. They said it would only come in the crack of night, tapping at the window or standing motionless at the foot of their bed, waiting like a predator towards prey. Then one night, it came for me once again. I laid wide awake in my bed, heart hammering inside my chest, its force so violent an agonizing pain swelled inside his chest, scorching hot. I somehow knew that I would hear those familiar sounds, and when they came, the horror still streamed down me like an overflowing waterfall constantly shifting into frothy, rippling waves. Tap, 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 tap. The taps were slow, deliberate, as if the grotesque bunny was waiting for me to acknowledge it. The fear crawled up me, tightening around me with a heavy, unshakable pressure. It threatened to freeze my body, stiffen the function of my limbs, but I pushed it down. I slowly shook my legs off the bed, placing them down on the floor to get up to check. A massive, unswallowable lump formed inside my throat, soaking up the remaining glands of saliva inside my throat, leaving a rawness that burned the insides of my throat with a soreness I couldn't quench. I hesitated, the air thick with a suffocating dread that threatened to overcome me. All I could do was shake off the feeling, creeping towards the window, pulling back the curtain slowly, and there it was, him, standing inches away from my window, exactly like before. The grin stretched impossibly wide up its cheeks, the dirted white fabric of the suit twitching, as if the bunny was itching to move. My breath hitched inside my throat as its arms raised up to place themselves on either side of the window ledge. Each step it took closer, an unsettling dragging noise sounded unnaturally loudly against the grass. My entire body stumbled back in paralyzation, body clashing loudly against the wooden furniture as I frantically pushed myself backwards on the floor away from the window, body searing with boiling white pain. But I could only watch as the bunny started to open the window from the outside. I was frozen in place, just staring, wide-eyed with horror up at the window. Wooden hinges screeched as the bunny pushed up the hinges of the window, its arms starting to crawl through the gap of the hinge, grasping down and attempting to push its body through the tiny gap the window hinge and ledge created. I truly believed that this was the end for me, just sitting there on the floor paralyzed, watching as the bunny crawled disturbingly slowly through the gap of my window. I never expected that my room door would creak open at that moment, but when I turned back towards the window, nobody was there. The next few days blurred together in an array of fear and desperation. Every night, I would hear the tap 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 against my window, and every night, the bunny would grow closer to me, until one evening, I woke up to find it standing in my room, its tall, slender body completely motionless in the darkness, its dirted suit hidden. The only thing I could make out were those tall, oversized droopy ears upon its head, and that wide, inhumanely stretched smile on its face, its teeth shining a sinister golden in the darkened room. I remained completely frozen once again, breath stuck inside my throat, heart hammering and the function of my limbs no longer working. But something was different this time. It wasn't just unblinkingly watching me, it was waiting for me to move, staring at me through those cold, wide, hollow eyes with an immense intensity one couldn't comprehend. After that, I can't remember what happened that night. The only thing I knew for sure was that the whispered rumors spreading throughout Little Creek like wildfire suddenly ceased, stopped. The disappearances had stopped, and soon the children of the town were never seen again. People moved out from the camp due to its history, and the entire place had never been so quiet. Even then, sometimes when I lay in bed, even as I write this unable to sleep, I hear it again, the tap 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 against my window. And when I pull the curtains back, I see it. The Easter Bunny. Easter Bunny. Unexplained. First time posting in this subreddit, and unsure if it's unexplained or an experience. I haven't had many paranormal happenings, but I do believe in the paranormal and love other people's stories. This particular event happened when I was maybe 6 to 7 years old. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. I shared a room with my older brother, and my dad slept in the other room directly across the hall from our room. We had a bunk bed futon that sat in front of the door. I had the top bunk and my brother slept on the futon part. I remember I had this irrational fear that if I slept with my head facing the door and my feet towards the closet in our room that monsters would eat my head/feet respectively, so I, always, slept with my head facing the closet. This is only important because my brother slept the opposite position than me. Early in the morning on Easter, I'd say about 3 to 4 a.m. something woke me up. I don't know what it was, but out of dead sleep I just sat up and looked into the hallway towards my dad's room, where his door was only open ajar. The darkness was fuzzy, but I distinctly remember seeing bunny ears start poking from the corner. The hallways was an upside-down L shape. Where the corner turned it was met by the kitchen and adjoined living room. I was honestly excited because Easter bunny. The ears became longer and then a bunny face popped up. And the bunny became larger. What stood about 4 feet began to stand as tall as the ceiling. Within a few moments it was a full-fledged bunny figure. I remember it was plaid and bright red eyes. I wasn't scared until it smiled. It had tons of large razor-sharp teeth. I didn't know until this point my brother saw it too, because as my young brain was processing this, I heard him whisper from below, "You see that too?" And then we both screamed. A moment later my dad comes bursting out of his bedroom right through this demented bunny, think Frank from Donnie Darko, and it just poofed and disappeared into thin air. My dad claims he never saw a thing and scoffed at us for making up such a dumb story to be awake early for Easter. My brother and I still talk about this event, and it's been 20 years. We can't explain it, and neither of us have really had any spooky happenings in our life. Just an out-of-the-blue evil-looking plaid bunny in our hallway.